Okay, this next video has a pretty crazy title. It's called the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. The Tetra Chord sounds like some big scary monster, but really it's just a sequence of 4 notes. The word tetra means 4. And the Tetra Chord plus a whole step altogether is a sequence of 5 notes used to build any chord. So I will show you what that is. This is the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. And in the previous videos you learned about half steps, notes that are right next to each other, and whole steps, and which the definition is 2 half steps added together. That's a whole step. Well, this is a combination of whole steps and half steps. And the pattern is whole step, half step, whole step. Say that with me. Whole step, half step, whole step. So if you put it together, what you're going to do is put your thumb down on the first note and then count. Whole step, half step, whole step. And that's your Tetra Chord plus a whole step. Now the reason the sequence of notes is so important is because notes 1, 3, 5 form the major chord. This is a C major chord. The first note in the chord is called the root. Just think of a tree. The roots are on the bottom and the first note is on the bottom of the chord. So note 1 in the chord is called the root. Now if you've had any experience in music at all, you've probably heard the terms major and minor chords. Major and minor chords are really the bread and butter of music. Any add-ons to those chords are really just added color. Okay, so let's try building the Tetra Chord plus a whole step pattern somewhere else. Let's try starting from the D and building the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. So put your thumb on the D and then let's count up. Whole step, half step, whole step. And then if you play notes 1, 3, 5, or fingers 1, 3, 5, then you have your D major chord. So remember the pattern is whole step, half step, whole step. Let's try that. Whole step, half step, whole step. And again, whole step, half step, whole step. And then 1, 3, 5 forms the major chord. Notice you didn't have to memorize any note names or memorize some long chart. All you had to do was memorize the pattern and then apply it. Whole step, half step, whole step. Again, the name of the pattern is the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. Let's demonstrate somewhere else on the keyboard. Let's place our thumb on the B flat. Here's your B flat right here. And then remember the pattern is whole step, half step, whole step. Let's try it. Put your thumb down and then whole step, half step, whole step. So if you play 1, 3, 5, the notes 1, 3, 5, or fingers 1, 3, 5, then you have your B flat major chord right there. See how easy that is? Let's try doing it on another note. Let's put our thumb on the E flat. There's your E flat. Let's see if we can build our Tetra Chord plus a whole step starting from the E flat. So place your thumb on the E flat and then count. Whole step, half step, whole step. There's your Tetra Chord plus a whole step. Now 1, 3, 5, fingers 1, 3, 5, or notes 1, 3, 5. There's your E flat major chord. Isn't that nice? You didn't have to memorize a whole bunch of stuff, just the pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step. Now let's look at something. Let's look at this A flat that I just played. Why did I call that an A flat rather than a G sharp? It could be an A flat or a G sharp, but why did I call it an A flat? Well, we already used up the G when we were counting up the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. And the cardinal rule here is never use any letter name more than once when you're building the Tetra Chord plus a whole step. So if we look at that, E flat, F, G, well, we already used the letter G, so now we have to say A flat, B flat. And there we go. It's called enharmonics. I know that's a big fancy name, but really all it means is that a note can have two names. And it's no different than, for example, me having two names. My students call me Miss Golden, and my children call me Mama. And in different contexts, I have two names. And it's the same in music. Depending on the context, these notes can have two different names. All right, let's talk about minor chords. To create minor chords, first, we are going to create the major chord. We will always build the major chord before you build the minor chord. So let's try. The easiest way to do it, eventually all these chords will become second nature to you, and you won't even have to think about them anymore. You'll just know it and you'll have it memorized. Let's see if we can build a minor chord. Right now, let's put our finger on the D. We're first going to create our tetrachord plus a whole step and make our major chord. Whole step, half step, whole step, there's our major chord. To make a minor chord, simply take the third, which is right here, and lower it a half step. And there's a D minor chord. There's your D minor chord. Minor chords have a mysterious sound to them. They're really pretty. Let's try building another minor chord. We'll put our thumb on the E. First, we will build our major chord. So put your thumb on the E and then count up. Whole step, half step, whole step. Play your major chord, and then remember to create the minor chord, you're going to lower the third a half step. And there's your E minor chord. So far, we've covered the essence of music theory. We started by learning how to find any note on the keyboard. Then we learned how to make any of those notes sharp or flat. Then we turned around and used those notes to create the basic building blocks of music, the half steps and the whole steps, which are then used to put together the tetra chord plus a whole step pattern, which are used to build major chords, which can then be altered to build minor chords. Now, the vast majority of musicians skip this step and they don't understand these foundational music theory concepts, but you do. So get ready for a fun and wild ride as we learn how to play chords by pattern and use our ear to create some really fun music.